guys. I thought it would be nice to just welcome you into my living room today and talk through a whole bunch of Q&A questions that were submitted by students. And it is as if you are joining me in my house for a cup of tea and a relaxing afternoon, or like a one-on-one mentoring session where we're just going to do a deep dive on all of these critical questions. And we have my little dog Juniper teacup joining us, and my other dog Tally is down here, and it's possible that they will get riled up or bark at something during our time together, but hopefully not. So yeah, let's just casually get started here. I have your questions in front of me. So there was a lot of overlap with the questions, and so I kind of collated everything, and so we can hit all the main points people had. So a lot of people asked, how do I finish a project? I have a lot of half starts. How do I stay focused on one thing so that it can develop into a fully fledged project rather than just a collection of random images? I have a lot of different ideas. I rarely finish anything. So I always think one important thing to keep in mind is that a full portfolio really can take a very long time to develop. Yes, you can do them you can do one in a weekend potentially, it happens. That's not insane. That does happen sometimes with certain projects in certain places and certain photographers. Sure. But that's really kind of that's out there. That's an outlier experience, I think. And most of the time, people work on a portfolio for a year or for 5 years or for 10 years, So as you're going around, bouncing around the web, looking at other photographers' portfolios, it just really feels like people have, these gorgeous portfolios that are just effortless. And there they are on the websites, and they look perfectly edited, and they look just so cohesive and polished. The reality is that there's a ton of work behind the scenes on that. And it took the photographer probably years to do. You really see this in action when you start going to portfolio review events where people are showing off a portfolio. You hear that they've been working on it for years. Sometimes what happens is they show the same exact portfolio at different portfolio reviews a few years in a row. Not totally ideal because there's a lot of overlap with the reviewers. At different portfolio review events. But yeah, you really start to get the sense more that, oh wow, I'm not slow or strange or wrong or broken if it's been 6 months and I only have 6 images in a portfolio. There's nothing wrong with me. That's just, it kind of operates on a longer timeline like that. So yeah, I think that if you are working on one thing for a bit and then you get distracted by something else is calling to your spirit more, so you just are more passionate about it. The seasons change, you're passionate about something different, there's different light, that is okay. I always think the most important thing is to follow up with whatever is bringing you most alive in the moment. Like say you're working on one project and then some other project, some other idea just like sparks you and you're jazzed about it. Would it be smarter or better to say, oh, God, I really want to do that right now, but I'm going to put that on hold, tamp that down, and work on this other project that I don't really care about so much, but I feel like I have to get it done, and I'm doing it sort of out of obligation. No, that sounds terrible, right? Like this isn't school or a job or something like that. You should absolutely follow that passion, because that's where the juice is, that's where the spark is, and that's where you're going to make your best work. And so maybe you go in that direction, and then this other project, it's on hold for a while because you don't care as much about it right now. It's not lighting you up right now. But maybe next year, it's going to light you up again. Or maybe you make one image a year from now that actually really feels like it goes with this project, right? One image just happens to be birthed a year later, and yeah, it really goes with that, right? So you pop it in there, and then you got one more image. Then 6 months later, you make another image. Oh, it goes with that, right? So it can be a long process of kind of accumulating images instead of you don't necessarily have to just like put blinders on, and just like pound out that one portfolio. I think it's most important to follow the spark of inspiration and joy and passion, because that is where you're making your best work. And sometimes projects are going to fall away. You do 10 images, you were all excited about it for a bit, and then now you don't care at all. Let it go. That's all it was meant to be, That is it, and that's okay. If you want to have a solo exhibition of that work or publish a book of that work, 10 images isn't really going to be enough for that, most likely. I don't know. I mean, you could potentially have a solo exhibition of that work, but it would be like you're making huge prints or something, and then it would be enough to fill a gallery with 10 images, but that'd be a little bit odd. So yeah, I understand the pressure to have a portfolio of about 20 or 25 images so that you can do things like gallery exhibitions, books. A book you would need more like, along the lines of 50 or something. But I understand the drive to do that, and it's okay to want to do that. I think it's just good to remember that it does take a lot of time, and to allow yourself that time, and to not feel like a failure or a bad artist if you're not pumping out finished portfolios, every 6 months or even once a year. That would be a really high production level and speed if you were doing one portfolio a year. That'd be wild, really. So yeah, just setting that expectation for yourself or amending that expectation, I think, is really, really helpful. You don't have to stay focused on one project. And if you do, sometimes it's detrimental, right, to your creative spirit. And I think whatever happens, you don't want to suck your creative spirit dry because you're trying to be too, you're pressuring yourself too much to produce, and you're being too hardcore with it, turning it into a job, But I think that in so much of the rest of our lives, we operate on that we operate on a system where it's like you start a project and you complete it, and in jobs and school and everything, it's just we learn that all through our lives, and then we take that into our art, and I think it can be a problem. So it's nice to just realize the art is a different space where a different mindset is more helpful, and following the joy and the inspiration and the juice is really the most important thing. That's going to keep you excited about your practice over the years, instead of just sucking it dry and having it turn into something that feels like a chore. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Okay. And we'll talk about that in a little bit of a different way coming up, because I know there's some more questions that are slightly related. So next question, though, is how do you know when an image is done or when a portfolio is done? I feel like an image is done when it just feels right in my heart. I just get this, I look at it and I feel pleased. And a portfolio is done when I'm either tired of working on it, I decide to be finished often, it's like a decision. I think I'm not going to work on this anymore. I think this is good enough. I think I like this enough. But with both those things, I feel really, really able to change them in the future if I want to. So that is helpful for me. Sorry, my windows are darkening here on my computer. But that's really helpful for me to I guess I don't consider anything totally done. Nothing's totally done and set in stone unless you are publishing it in a book or it's winding up published in a magazine somewhere or something. Then that would be pretty done, right? But barring that, I might re-edit something years later. I remember a favorite photograph that I took in Vietnam in color. I had it in a portfolio in color for a really long time. Then I'm kind of over that portfolio. I'm not so interested in it anymore. What year did I shoot that? I don't know, 2011 or something. So I'm just not as interested in that entire portfolio. But that one image I really liked, and I felt like maybe it had a place in a later portfolio that I did, but that portfolio was black and white. So I just made it black and white, and now it's in the new portfolio. So I feel like this is our work. We're the artists, so we can really do whatever we want. And if you want to change images in a portfolio in the future, if you have 25 images that are in a portfolio on your website, and then you decide 5 years from now that you want to throw 5 of those out and add 5 new ones, then you can absolutely do that. So maybe that takes some pressure off, right? It doesn't have to, nothing has to be done. But as far as wanting things to be done in the moment, I think it is just a decision. And it's also, so much of this, so much of what we do as artists is about, it is kind of like a somatic practice, like an embodied practice, like checking in with how does your body feel. I find that more and more. I'm enjoying thinking about that and talking about that more and more. When I look at this image, how does it feel in my body? Does it feel just like, oh, yes? Or does it feel like, I don't really know. I think I'm trying to convince myself that this image is good. Maybe because other people I think will like it, or this looks like what other people are producing, or this looks like what won that one competition somewhere, or it meets certain external expectations. So I really should try to like it better because I think it's, going to be pleasing for others. Is that what you're doing? Or are you really just sitting with an image and thinking, oh, like every cell in my body just feels really good about this shot, even though I think other people might not love it, but it just feels good to me anyway. And I'm just going to listen to that and trust that. I'm going to decide to do that, So I think you can sit with an image, just look at it, kind of soak it in for a minute, sit with it, see how it feels in your body. I can't recommend that enough. And when you're not being honest with yourself about an image, right? You do know that. But I think this is all such a good way to practice with actually listening to our intuition, because man, our little inner voice in there knows so much, and we spend most of our life repressing it, right? I know I have. And that is so damaging. And then a year or 2 or 3 later, I look back and I think, you know what? My inner voice knew all along, my inner voice knew at the very beginning of this project, at the very beginning of this relationship, at the very whatever it is, right? Very beginning of this job, my inner voice was spot on, absolutely correct. And I danced around it, and I jumped through hula hoops, and I did back bends, and I repressed it, and I convinced myself otherwise, looked outside of myself for other people to tell me what I should do. And really, I've known all along. So I think one of my biggest lessons at my mid-40s here is that I need to really start trusting that, listening to that when it comes up. And I can't think of a better compass with our art. That's it. That's all we've got, right? That little inner knowing. So it's a wonderful space to practice with, just listening to it, sitting with that print and thinking, do I love this or not? Really, what's the answer? You already know it. Yeah. So simple practice and also challenging in a way, right? That's how you know when it's done. And nothing has to be done. That's the other truth. You can always open things up again, start over, change things. You're the artist, Okay. How do you keep your practice fresh? With fresh new inspiration, new things to work on all the time. My biggest challenge is keeping my vision fresh and not getting stuck in a rut. I think it's too tall of an order to want to be inspired all the time, or to think that that's the expectation, that's the metric, that I continually have a fresh practice, I'm continually inspired, even regularly. It's kind of a tall order because there's life, and sometimes stuff happens in life and you're just not inspired for all sorts of reasons, or sometimes you go through a really productive period with your photography and then you got nothing after that, right? It's like you just spent all that energy, and juice, and then you're depleted. And it's okay. That's okay. So I always think that we can't have creative output, amazing creative output all the time without having really solid, really solid rest, and then also really wonderful input, creative input to fill our cup again, you know? So that's really important too. I think setting the expectation that I'm not going to be inspired all the time, my practice is not going to feel fresh all the time. There are going to be times where it feels really stagnant. And that's normal. It's nice, isn't it, to be older? I'm sure that you guys can see this in other areas of your life too, where when you start to get older, you realize, oh, there are these real patterns that I've been through in my life, right? When you're in your 20s, you're kind of at the mercy of things that come up, and you're not aware that you tend to have, I don't know, patterns, habitual responses. You tend to have down times, you tend to have up times, you tend to have, you just are at the mercy of each one of those. And when you're older, I think you recognize, oh, this is just a season of sadness. I've had these before, and I'm going to have a season of happiness later because I know that it's just how life works, right? I'm going to have a season of stagnancy with my work, and then I'm going to have a season of real productivity because lo and behold, when I look back over the last 20, 30 years, that's defined my practice. And that's nice because it's like we can remember to be a little gentler with ourselves when we are in those seasons of stagnation, lack of inspiration, because we know that that's just what season it is. That's what story we're in right now, right? Or that's what season it is. Totally fine. How can you build yourself up? How can you rest? How can you fill your cup with inspiration from many other sources? Your life is your creative practice, right? It's not just your art. So how could you go and go running, go hiking, go baking, go hanging out with friends, learn to barbecue? I'm learning to barbecue right now. It's so fun. And the things that I'm doing right now that are most inspirational for me, I feel most charged doing, are running, gardening, and barbecuing. Making creative marinades, doing that, standing in the yard in my garden with beautiful music on, my dog's bopping around, and I'm cooking up some yummy feast, and that is creative, and that's filling my cup creatively. And then all of that goes into making me a better artist, a more inspired artist, a more whole, like a whole person. So yeah, I think we can't create in a vacuum. We can't continuously create and have that expectation for ourselves. We need to fill ourselves up too. So those are my thoughts on that. Let's see. Oh, and just, other art. Looking at other art in many other mediums. Also, I would say reading what other artists have to say or watching YouTube videos of other artists talking about their work. Painters, potters, textile artists, whatever. Go and listen to some of that stuff. I love listening to other artists or writers or poets talk about their creative process. I have learned so much and been so inspired hearing poets talk about how they write poetry. It relates so much to what we do as photographers, So that is exciting and can often light a little spark in me. And then I guess I have a couple other things to say. Keeping the practice fresh, other things that can help, and I know some of you have heard me talk about this before, but it's like maybe you change your format. Maybe you change from color to black and white. Maybe you make panoramas for a while. What if you do that? When you change your aspect ratio, it's so simple, but it can completely change the way you shoot and your vision because you are composing in a different size space. There's a different center of gravity. There's a different, design. You design completely differently in a different space. So if you're doing everything straight out of camera, digital camera, you've got the 35 millimeter aspect ratio and you're shooting color and you're choosing the color the way that the camera sees it, the way that your digital camera is programmed to see color. That's what you're doing. Could be a good time to switch it up. What if you started doing black and white panoramas for 2 weeks? That could be pretty fun and neat. I've enjoyed doing that over the years, just switching it up a little bit. Okay. Now we're going to talk about sharing work. So one of the questions was how to develop the courage to put your work out there. I think with this, first off, I don't think you have to put your work out there. I don't think that is a natural, normal, necessary, expected part of the creative process. And I think in this day and age, a lot of people get confused with that, or it sure seems like there are a lot of forces out there that tell us you pick up your camera, you start photographing, stuff looks good, then you share it on social media, and then you have shows, and there's this whole progression that's sort of expected, but it's absolutely not necessary. Not everybody's walking that same path. So if you feel like I don't have the courage to put my work out there, and when I think about putting my work out there, it just feels like, ugh, I just get this yuck. I just don't want to do it. It feels awful. It feels vulnerable. It feels exposing. It feels frightening. If all of the bodily feelings that you're having are just yuck, full body yuck, then I don't think it's about changing your mindset and developing courage to do it when it's a full body no for you. Okay, so I don't think it's your fault or something's wrong with you or you need to shake things up or get your head in the game, or if it's a full body yuck for you, that's your answer. It's not a confidence problem at that point. It's just that is not the path for you. And I think it's nice to own that. If something that everybody else is doing or a lot of other people are doing is not the path for you, I always feel like when I encounter something like that in my own life or my creative life especially, if that path is not for me and I know it, that was my dog groaning. I almost have this sense of like confidence in my different path. I don't want to show my work in galleries for the most part and be represented by galleries. I'm not going to feel bad that I'm not doing it. I feel proud that I've made a different decision for myself and my work that's more aligned with my personality, my, business ideas, my lifestyle, my work-life balance, all of that. I feel like I can talk to other people about that and own it because I've made a decision that's really, really good for me. So that is helpful. So I just want to say that off the bat. If you feel like you really would love to share your work, because that's absolutely okay, and you don't feel like you have the confidence to do it, but it's just like you just really want to do it. You want to do it, and you feel like that is the full expression of your work, is for it to be shared. That's great. I think I would think about, where else in your life have you been afraid to do something and you've done it anyway, and you've taken little steps towards it, and then a few more steps towards it, and then a couple more, and you've expanded that comfort zone slowly over time? Are there other examples in your life of where you've done that? Just kind of looking at those things, and honoring the path that you've been on with that. Looking at those things for examples. How did I do that? What was helpful to me in my process of doing that? How did I take that one little first step with that? So you might brainstorm that out. Also, just to prove to yourself, that you have done that before. And then I think, like what we talked about with that inner knowing, when you know an image is good, you just feel it in your body. This is it. It's done. I love it. Those are the images that you will share. And you're not going to get wonderful accolades every single time. So it's about letting go of that, but putting out the work that you feel you love the most and you're most confident with. And standing by it, you know, just putting it out there and giving it a whirl. And knowing that sometimes it's going to fall flat. You're going to post it at an odd time on Instagram. Nobody's going to see it. The algorithm is changing. You might not get a lot of likes, but you are doing it. And you're slowly going to gain confidence from there, from just like putting out a little bit at a time the images that you truly love, not the images that you think other people will love. I think that's a really helpful piece in developing more confidence to put your work out there a little bit more. But yeah. Get a website, try out having a website. Just because you have a website doesn't mean everybody in the world is going to see your work. I think that's important to remember. So it can feel really scary to get a website and put stuff up. It's like, oh my God, I'm so exposed to the world. But actually, nobody's going to see your website unless you drive people to it with a lot of marketing, right? So less eyes are on that than you would imagine. And it actually isn't quite so scary, when you remember that. Yeah. Okay. How to gain exposure for your work. Calls for entry seem so random. Yeah, they are. And I think calls for entry are great to enter when you're not when you're just starting out with your photography, but when you've been doing it for a few years, you're pretty solid. You're doing some solid work. You've got your technical chops and you're making images that feel a little above basic student work. Then it can be a good time to enter calls for entry. But I think you always want to, it can rack up, right? The cost of doing those. I think you need to do your research, and I think you need to be smart. It's like throwing money away to be a smaller fish in a bigger pond, right? And it's smarter and more strategic to pick competitions that are local, maybe local nonprofit photo centers, local publications, things like that, or regional, where that you are going to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. Then lo and behold, you get in more and you can build your resume more. And that's going to be important. Having a resume that's more built up will be more important as you try for bigger opportunities, because they're really going to want to see that you have a solid resume, right? That starts to matter when you start entering bigger opportunities. So yeah, I would be really strategic. Research the jurors, look and see, are they even remotely interested in the kind of work I'm doing? And don't waste your money on somebody who's absolutely not your style. Look at the past winners of competitions and see if they're the same caliber as you, or if they're obviously, if it's like all the people who won this last year have been photographing for the New York Times and National Geographic for the last 20 years, and they went to ICP in New York and they've had exhibits in Chelsea. It's like, don't play in that pool. It's just going to be disappointing, and it's not a great way to build your resume. If you enter smaller ones, it's better and you're more likely to get in. And I would absolutely do that for like a mid-career. And I would say that most of the people in Gathering Light are kind of like in that mid stage where it makes a lot of sense to enter juried exhibitions, but very strategically. And at a certain point, entering those starts to feel like, I don't know if I need to do this anymore. I'm tired of spending money on this stuff. I think I have enough work together. I think I have a portfolio of work, or maybe like half a portfolio, 10 images or so. Maybe I could do a solo exhibition somewhere, or maybe I could do a 2-person show, could be pretty neat, or a 4-person show, or organize your own group show with other people that you all put together. You can do things like that, and then you don't have to pay to enter, right? If you're entering a gallery for a solo exhibition, there's no entry. It's very rare to see an entry fee, or if you do see a very high, sometimes, entry fee to have a show at some gallery in Milan, or it's not real. It's not real, or it is real, but it's not really considered a real top shelf gallery, and actual curators and art world people aren't going there. It's all a money-making scheme to get money from naive artists. So I don't know, keep your wits about you with that kind of thing. I've heard of some good experiences with that, but they are out to get you, so really be careful with that. But by and large, you do not have to pay to enter a gallery with, images for a solo exhibition if you want to be considered for that. So that starts to be a better option for you if you're more like advanced, middle of the road, or more experienced when you actually have portfolios together, because you will need a cohesive portfolio with a cohesive theme when you start to apply for opportunities like that. And then I guess I also want to say on that, the exposure question, I'm always kind of DIY and iconoclastic and anti-establishment. And so I really, really like creating my own opportunities. And instead of waiting for people to pick me, right? I just have never liked that. And I've always thought if I want something, I'll go out and create it. So if that resonates with you, if you feel like, gosh, I'm not getting picked for stuff and it's so annoying, and I have this vision to share and I know people like it, and I like, create your own exhibitions. You can absolutely do that. And if you want to start thinking about all these DIY ways that you can get your work out there and gain exposure for it, then I will link somewhere below here to something I did called a studio chat. And I may do more of those in the future. But a studio chat that's all about going outside of traditional venues and opportunities and strategies to create your own opportunities. So it's a whole bunch of ideas for how you can do that, and you can build your resume yourself, and you can share your work with audiences that are perfect for your work if you're really smart and strategic and you think outside of the traditional art world context. So that is a helpful resource if you have that more DIY spirit with that kind of thing. Okay. What's the best way to share my photos with others? Social media, website, newsletter, combo of all three? I think it depends on what your goals are with your work. I think that in general there are like a couple different tactics, or a couple different modes of operation in photography. You can either go the traditional route, which is totally art world route, right? Where you're getting picked by tastemakers, like we just talked about. You're getting into galleries, you're represented by galleries, they are selling your work for you. You have to have portfolios. Or you can go the route that I now am more focused on, which is selling my work, promoting my work directly to people who like my work, and selling my work directly to those people. So when you do, so which one of those do you want to do, right? So kind of examine that. Do you want to go into galleries, and do you want to, oh dear. Okay, we had to pause because my neighbor's yard guys came over, and for the last hour they have been mowing and leaf blowing and edging and the whole thing. So I'm back. But basically, you have to decide which track you want to go, right? Would you like to do the museum track, or would you like to do more selling and promoting directly to people? The gallery museum track, or directly to people. If you want to go this track, then you are responsible for your own marketing, right? So then, yes, you would absolutely want to have your social media top notch, your website, your newsletter would be very important, because that's a way to kind of own your list of your audience, instead of on social media. That's a little more nebulous, right? Your Instagram could get shut down tomorrow, and then poof, the audience that you've built up is gone. But with an email list, it's more solid, right? And so that would be really, really important if you want to promote your work directly to people, your photo services, maybe your prints, anything like that. If you want to go the gallery and museum route, that stuff is not as important, because galleries will do marketing for you. right? So you don't have to be as on top of that. But that said, a lot of savvier galleries now want to work with photographers who have a really big online presence. So they want to work with people. They'll go look at your Instagram and see, do you have a lot of followers? Because maybe they don't have a lot of followers and they're sort of depending on photographers to get the word out and to bring the photographer's whole audience to the galleries. That's something that's important to pay attention to. Like, who's benefiting who here, really? That's a whole nother topic. But yeah, if you go the gallery route, they will be doing some marketing for you. You potentially, especially when working with smaller venues, that kind of thing, or older galleries, potentially get away with not having any of these other sources of personal marketing. A lot of times what you see when photographers go that route, they send out a newsletter like once a quarter or every 6 months, and it says something like, hey, update from me. I had a show here and I sold prints at this fair and I did that and I have a show coming up here. And I always feel like those emails are among the least interesting emails to receive. You know, it's like I don't need to hear that some photographer who lives in a different state had an exhibition 3 months ago in another state that's nowhere near me, or that they have an opening on Tuesday night in another country. That's not relevant to the audience, really. So I always feel like those email newsletters are kind of, they don't make sense. They're not strategic in any way, and they're not offering people valuable information that they can benefit from, really. That's also a whole different topic. Targeting your audience, right? And serving your audience. And instead of marketing, thinking about serving people. So how are you doing it? So an email like that doesn't really serve anybody, so it's not as valuable. But then artists who are doing kind of more like what I'm doing, artists who are selling their work directly to people, we would be much more interested in a really regular, social media posting as regular as possible. It is so hard, and I know I could be doing it a lot more, and I'm not. I'm doing it to a point where it works with my spirit and my moods and just the amount that I can handle. But it can feel kind of soul-sucking, tough to do too much social media and feel like you have to be on there all the time, right? But even so, as much as possible, we'd be doing social media. We'd be showing up in Instagram stories, Facebook, Instagram, other platforms that feel relevant for you. A lot of people are moving to YouTube. If you want to go that route, you would need to be very aware that the only way to succeed in that world is to do a lot of your own marketing and to feel comfortable doing that, or to, work up to feeling comfortable doing that. I would say that you cannot do that unless you can bite the bullet and just be really realistic. Like, I'm going to need to do a lot of marketing. I'm going to need to learn how to do marketing, and I'm going to need to plug it all the time. So if that feels like not something you want to do, that's absolutely okay. It's kind of like marketing is a whole separate thing that you also need to do. So it's like, yes, I'm a working artist, and yes, I'm a teacher. I am also an internet marketer. That's not necessarily what I wanted to be, but it's a necessary part of it. And it's kind of fun in a way. That could be a fun class to talk about, a subject to talk about in class, or do a whole class around that at some point, because it can feel pushy and awful and just, or you can make it feel really lovely and like you're offering things that are really serving people. You can stand behind those things, help people and inspire people, and then it feels more authentic and better. But yeah, I think you just need to look at, first off, which direction do I want to go with my work? Do I want to go the more established art world route and have other people market for me and need to do less marketing on my own by and large, but with that little caveat that a lot of savvier, newer galleries like you to have quite a presence online? That'll make them want to work with you more. Or do I want to go this other route that's more sort of what Laura is doing, or what painters and other people online are doing, ceramicists, knowing that I would need to do a lot of marketing and learn how to do that? Kind of feel that out for yourself. The pro to going this route is that you are not sharing 50% of your profits with the gallery. Yes, you're doing all your marketing, but you are receiving all of your profits. So some pros and cons to weigh, and thinking about, I think the most important thing to think about is just your personality, right? And what feels good to you. You want to do that and not do something that feels really awful to you, that is going to make you lose all the joy in what you're doing, because you don't have to sell your work. You absolutely don't. That's not a necessary part of this whole practice either. Like, we got into photography because of the joy it brought us, right? It was just like the amazement of seeing the world through a lens and watching the light and having these poignant moments in the field with the breeze and looking at these scenes that just bring us alive and tap into our memories and our emotions and our intuition and all the really beautiful parts. That's why we're doing it. So I want us to not lose sight of that, right? The just like healing part, how healing it is, how joyful it is, how it brings us alive, how it makes our lives richer and more meaningful. We don't need to take that and then monetize it. That's not necessary. It's not the right thing for everybody. You certainly could if it feels, but it's like not necessary. And I like the example lately has occurred to me, like I might have started a meditation practice because I needed to ground and center myself and, work on coming back to myself, or whatever reason you might have for doing a meditation practice. You might have this meditation practice. You might do it for years, but never do you think, the natural next step is for me to monetize this, right? Or even a yoga practice. You could do yoga for the next 20 years and nobody would ever say to you, well, you've been doing it a long time. Maybe you should open your own studio. Or maybe you should start doing YouTube videos and charging for them. Or that's not a natural part of it, right? And you would have the beauty of that personal practice to carry you throughout your life, to support you throughout your life without the burden of monetizing it. So think about it like that, right? I know that a lot of people out there in the world, in the photo world, or in just like your friends and family world, knowing that you are a photographer might say to you, well, what are you going to do with it? Like, what's it for? What are you going to do with it? You're doing, that's great, but like, how are you going to monetize it? And that could be a nice opportunity for just some gentle education around like, oh, it's actually my personal practice, like meditation or like, yoga or whatever it is, my gardening practice, right? So yeah, you can sell stuff if you want. It's a whole different beast and it can be really wonderful. But I just want to invite you to not feel that that's necessary. Okay. So somebody mentioned their lack of ability to do social media and marketing. Great. It's great to know that about yourself and to then let it go. And to again, I keep coming back to, instead of feeling guilty about that or bad about that or less than, like everyone else is doing it and I should do this and that is the way to do it, to think I'm going to like, it sounds a little cheesy, but like stand in my power with this, because that is not the way I do it. I don't do that because I think, maybe for you, it's like, I think social media is awful and I hate the whole algorithm, whatever it is. Like, you can have confidence about your choice in that because it's a wonderful choice and it's right for you, and that makes it really meaningful. And you could maybe like teach other people that, invite other people to like show them it's possible to be an artist and to be doing beautiful, meaningful work for you, and to not feel the need to feed the machine, feed the algorithm and suck yourself dry. You can do that if you want to and if it feels healthy. It's hard to talk to so many people because each of you has a different set of needs and goals, and each of you has a different definition of what success is for you. So I'm simultaneously, right, talking to people who do not want to sell their work and people who really do. And so I want to just be sure to try to hit both of those perspectives. Okay. Somebody asked about, the the feeling of this pressure to create new masterpieces every day, new work all the time, constantly at this really fast pace. I get it, because that's what social media has done to us. That's all a product of social media. It didn't used to be like that 40 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years, 50 years ago in photography. I always remind myself of what Ansel Adams said once, that he thought 12 images in a year was a good crop. Right? Remind yourself of, that is wild. He thought a good year was if he had made 12 strong images. And now it's like, oh, you need a brand new image every day on Instagram to keep your audience engagement up, That's just not, that's the pace of the algorithm, and that's the pace of, social media culture, but it's not the pace of good art. And I think you just need to really honestly recognize that and let that go. And again, think, I'm not going to create fast and furious if I don't feel like it, just to have content to feed the machine. That would just water down the quality of what I'm putting out there and make me feel crummy about it. Like I said, the way to gain more confidence with your work is to only put out what you feel really great about. So are you going to start putting out just watered down, crummy, quickie snaps that no, you don't really want to do that. But that said, I do think that a nice way to social media, we make it into a verb, a nice way to do it is to share finished images, and then to share behind the scenes stuff, to share pictures of prints like I talked about, my marketing flat lay images, to share all about your process. So it's not that my social media feed, for example, is 100% finished, amazing photographs. I have those, but interspersed with other stuff. And then in stories, I share more like studio stuff and life stuff. And that helps me to just flesh it out and have more to share, more to talk about. And I'm not so 100% dependent on those final fabulous images. And sometimes I share images that are like sketches, or like, here's part of an idea, or, but I'm not sharing just like, just like every single picture that I take, in a week. That would just be too much. And who wants to see that? It needs to be curated a little bit, I think. So yeah, I understand that pressure to have masterpieces all the time and to produce at the pace of social media. And that is not a human pace. It is just not a human pace. And so I would recognize that is not healthy. Recognize that nobody's really doing that. Nobody's creating a masterpiece every day. And to allow yourself to breathe and take some of that pressure off so you can enjoy your life, and keep your sanity and keep your peace. And that's so much more important at the end of the day than feeding the algorithm. My computer's running out of juice, but we have some more questions here. Okay, how to be more decisive with your images, your choices, your projects. It's helpful to have prompts, but I lack follow through and left to my own devices. How to make a decision and stick to it. How to maintain momentum once the choice has been made. How to set goals. I don't even have any. I just shoot kind of randomly and lose focus. All kind of the same general idea. So I wanted to talk about, basically this is about projects, goals, finishing, being decisive, right? I wanted to talk about the way I work with projects. And maybe it'll just be freeing to you guys to think about this as a working method. I would say that I never start a project and then work on it and then finish it. I really never do that with my art in the way that people usually think of, or you're maybe thinking of right now with this question. The way that I operate is I gather a project together after I've made images. So I just go out and shoot all the images I love to shoot just randomly. I'm photographing randomly. And then I gather a project together from all of my raw material. So the only time that I am working on a project is when I'm gathering those finished images together and seeing if they feel cohesive, like, oh, like looking back at all the images that I've shot in the last year or two, oh, look, all these kind of go together. This bunch of 20 or so, these all feel like they're really speaking the same language. They kind of hang together nicely. And so I pull them together, and then I name the portfolio, and then I write a statement. And that process, like, that's when I'm working on the project. That might take a weekend just to pull the images together like we did in the palette portfolio, right? That was stuff that you had already shot. Stuff that you've already shot, and you're pulling it together, and then you're writing a tiny little statement. Boom. That's actually the only time that you were objectively working on the project. You weren't working on that project when you shot those images, right? So that's how I operate, which is really nice, because then it's not like, oh, I'm working on this. I have this idea for this project, kind of like you would in school, right? If you're doing an MFA program, you'd be like, okay, what is my intention? I'm going to do a project about underwater basket weavers. And I'm going to work on that seriously and in a focused way for the next 8 months. And I'm going to make all these images. I'm not going to work on anything else. I'm just going to boom, 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 boom. And at the end, I'm going to have a portfolio. I've never been able to really work like that. I think it can be nice to have a theme and an idea if that feels very supportive to you and gives you some kind of structure. But as you've seen, you can peter out with it, right? And it's kind of what we started out talking about. So I just want to offer this as like an alternate method. You don't have to feel that pressure of for 6, 8 months or a year or two, or having a project, one project, very defined, and potentially losing interest. Or you can just shoot whatever your heart wants to shoot. I shoot images I love. I have zero project in mind. And that's really freeing. And then I can pull together a portfolio maybe in a weekend if I set my mind to it. And then it's win-win, because I have just so much fun photographing intuitively, emotionally, whatever I want to shoot. A lot of the stuff does not wind up in portfolios. Those are just more single images that happen to, they don't go with anything else, and that's okay. Okay, I need to plug my computer in, so we are going to move. Okay, I just had to plug in. The other thing I want to say on that is that at this point, I don't even feel a ton of pressure to do projects anymore. And that's been a really interesting shift for me. And it's because the way I operate now with my business is I sell individual prints. I'm not really interested in showing in galleries, so I don't pursue it. I show occasionally if I'm invited, but I really it's not something I pursue because I don't want to spend a ton of money printing an entire exhibit, framing it, shipping it, and then giving away half of the profits to the gallery. It just does not seem like it pencils out for me. And I would rather sell prints unframed individually to collectors. And so when you're operating like that, you really don't need portfolios of 25 images that all go together and have a consistent theme like you do in the gallery world. So that's really freeing also, because that means that photographs I take that are just one-offs, it's like, oh, this doesn't really go with anything, but it's a strong image. I can put that in my shop and it might do well in the shop. It doesn't need a portfolio to back it up, And then if you go and look at the shop on my website, you'll see that it's just a sort of random-ish. I mean, they all look like they were shot by me, but it's not a portfolio by any means. There maybe is a color image in there and some black and white, a couple colors, black and white. So I don't have that pressure to have 25 images. And let's face it, in basically any portfolio, 25 image portfolio, not all of those images are going to be sellable. Not all of them are going to be images that people want to put above their couch. Some of them are going to be kind of like breathing room images, or images that tell important pieces of the narrative maybe, or, they're not all like fabulous single image. They all have to be they really do have to be very strong, but not all of them are going to be the most salable ones. So yeah, but that's how I work on a project. So maybe think about doing that. What would that look like for you if you totally abandon this concept that really was started by MFA programs and BFA programs, that you've got to think of a project idea and set out and execute it? And it's pressuring you and making you uncomfortable. For most people, that's the case. What if you completely abandoned that and worked like I'm describing here? Photograph passionately, pull together projects afterwards. Give yourself a weekend once a year to pull together something that could resemble a portfolio if you feel you need that. It's freeing. Okay. A few people said the biggest challenge that I have is dedicating time to my photography. Gathering light is helpful because it's a reminder to keep photography in the foreground, but without some structure, life gets in the way, chores, to-dos take precedence. How can I prioritize photography? How can I stop procrastinating? I procrastinate a lot of stuff in life. It happens to all of us, right? But some harsh words around this that I often say to myself, and they're helpful and sort of true, are, if you're not doing it, it's because you don't prioritize it. It's not really a priority to you. Ooh, that's a bitter pill, right? I remember hearing that for the first time and it was like, yeah, I can make excuses. And I can say, I want to do it, but I just never am doing it. Why is that? It's because it's actually not a priority. So why isn't it a priority, right? And when I really sit and think about this, I think with art, it's like, how has your practice changed? How's your practice changed? What's changed in your practice from the time when you were just on fire with your photography and you just couldn't wait and you were doing it every day or as much as possible because you loved it, right? And then slowly something changed to the point where now you're like, I love it and I'd love to be doing it, but I just never get around. What changed? I think it'd be really instructive and enlightening to sit down and brainstorm that out a little bit. What are all the things that changed? What have you added or subtracted to your practice since then that's maybe affected that? So maybe now you have knowledge of the art world that you didn't before. And you feel this kind of like burden of the art world over your shoulders at all times. Maybe you look at a lot more photographers at a much higher level. And so you feel pressure because you have imposter syndrome now and you know how people are making this amazing work and you feel less than, or you just see what other people are achieving and it's bearing down on you, right? Think about all those things. Maybe those are the biggest ones. The biggest ones I can kind of think of, but you probably think of some other ones that are relevant to you and your personal story. What's changed? And then think about, how could I change it back? How could I let some of that go? Okay. I'm not good at words, titling images, or writing a narrative about my images. Okay. I think a lot of people think this, and yet you know how to talk. You know how to express your ideas to friends and loved ones. You truly do. And you know why you made certain images. When you were in the field and you saw this beautiful scene, you know why you pressed the shutter and you didn't press the shutter back 10 minutes earlier when you were faced with some other scene. You know your own mind. And I don't think that the words have to be as fancy and academic and serious and important and grandstandy and grandiose as a lot of the very academic artist statements that we see that are just, they're silly, really, and a lot of us know that they're silly. And I think what's much more important is, and much more effective too for marketing, is language that is down to earth and warm and conversational and accessible. And you already know how to talk like that. That's how you're talking to all of your friends. So yeah, I would just let go of the idea that you need to produce something that's very academic and hoity-toity, and write like you speak. And I look at one of your images and just ask yourself, what does this image mean to me? Or what's one thing it relates to in my life? What's one thing it reminds me of or connects to? What's one thing it relates to in my life? What does it make me think of? And then why does that matter? Why does this image matter? Is there a little story behind it that's interesting? I think it's useful to just sit with the image. I'm trying to get the glare off my glasses, you guys, sorry. Sit with one of your images for a while and ask, what does it mean? Why is this important to me? What does it relate to in my life? Maybe, did you shoot it at a certain time when you were going through something in particular? Or what's the narrative there? What's the story there? And then say it in just simple, warm language. If you're trying to sell your work yourself on your website, take these off until I have to read the question. If you're trying to sell your work on your website, you will find that the best language you can possibly use to sell your images is that warm, conversational, accessible, down-to-earth human language. And it's not hoity-toity language. It's not academic language. That is not going to sell your work to people. It's just not going to work. Okay, sorry guys, my dog barked. So the last question is, I love mindfulness. I know how important slowing down is, and I really try to do that, but it is a struggle. It makes sense that it would be. The pace of modern life is so pell-mell, right? And then slowing down even a little tiny bit is like really putting the brakes on, and it's just hard to recalibrate like that, to change our pace. She'd love to know more advanced ways to incorporate mindfulness into photography practice. I'm just going to say mindfulness, the question was Zen Buddhism, but I feel like we'll talk about it a little more generally and talk about mindfulness practice. So yeah, mindfulness practice is all about like being present with what is, enjoying the present moment, just stopping and breathing, stopping for a minute, letting go of worrying about the future, letting go of ruminating on the past, and just being here now with what is and enjoying that, because it's almost always possible to enjoy some element of it. You are probably safe in the present moment, right? And so you can enjoy always some element of it, no matter how much you might be grieving or in loss or stressed. There's a pretty little beam of light, or a plant nearby that's making you happy or something like that. And we can approach photography like that, slowing down and enjoying the weight of the camera in your hand, enjoying the crunch of your foot on the gravel on the path, breathing in, enjoying the air, taking a few breaths before you press the shutter and make an image, sitting with your subject and appreciating it for a minute if you can. All of that is so helpful for connecting with our own practice more, connecting with the environment more deeply, so that we care about, what we're doing. And then I think what's been most helpful for me, I always think of my photography practice as a spiritual practice for me. That may or may not resonate with you, with all of you, and that's absolutely fine. Take what serves you and leave the rest, but it does feel like a spiritual practice for me. And the way I think about it is my photography is an insight practice. Meditation is an insight practice, right? There's a whole type of meditation called insight meditation. But so you might mull something over in your meditation, some particular piece of philosophy or something like that, or just sitting and meditating and breathing and coming back to the breath, coming back and back and back to the breath when your mind wanders. That is all deeply insightful. Sometimes you sit on the cushion and you are blissed out and you are focused and your mind is empty. It's lovely. Sometimes you sit on the cushion and your mind is wildly dispersed. Your mind is in pain. You cry because all these emotions well up while you're stopping and sitting. That happens too. But it's just about being present with all of that, practicing being present with all of that. But I like thinking about, what are we really doing with photography? Are we just going out and taking a bunch of pretty pictures And then what do we do with those? And what's it all about? And what if it was an insight practice that teaches you about how to be a better human, that teaches you about what you love and what moves you, that teaches you how to love, that teaches you how to let go, that teaches you how to heal, that teaches you how to process through things, that teaches you how to maybe move through sacred anger, or that teaches you how to experiment and be bold and crazy. What if it's all an insight practice to teach you key things? You know, it is an insight practice that is like a path to enlightenment. How might your photography enlighten you? What would you be like if your practice was really enlightened? I think a lot of that would be about letting go of a lot of the things that we've talked about, right? All these external pressures that just make the practice feel so awful sometimes. Letting go of the art world, letting go of what would it be about if it was distilled just into an insight practice for your, your entire life, for making your life more meaningful, for serving other people, maybe, for supporting other people, for loving other people better, for bringing more beauty into your life and other people's lives, for bringing more wisdom, for moving you towards enlightenment. I don't know, just think about all those juicy ideas, right? What would it be like if it was really an insight practice for you? Other things I think about are just a deep appreciation for impermanence and how that can feel so depressing on the surface, that things are impermanent, right? Like, it's deeply sad to imagine that everybody we know is going to die, and loss is an unavoidable part of life if we're lucky, right? If we're lucky enough to live longer, we're gonna experience terrible loss and grief, and that is a part of it. There's in Buddhism, there's the Four Noble Truths, and it's a core foundational part of Buddhism. And the first part of that is suffering exists. And so a lot of people think, oh, Buddhism is so depressing. It's founded on that. That sounds awful. But it's actually pretty beautiful, because it's like suffering exists. So, oh, wow, that means that I'm going to experience it. And I'm going to experience it again, and I'm going to experience it again in life. And then I'm going to experience joy, and then I'm going to experience suffering again. It's just a normal part of it. It's going to happen. And then suddenly when I accept that, I don't have this expectation that I should never experience it. And if I am experiencing it, it's unfair, right? I just have this understanding that, oh, here we are again. It's suffering again. Yep, that's part of it. And impermanence is part of it. It's part of it. Suffering is impermanent. The joy is impermanent, right? Pain is impermanent. The healing is impermanent. The good images we make, they're impermanent. The bad ones are too. We just chuck them out, delete. They're really impermanent. Yeah, it's like beautiful to sit with impermanence in particular, I think, actually, because it makes us so much more grateful for what we have in the moment. It's like, this is all going to disappear. And so, wow, it's powerful that it's here now. Aren't we lucky? Unbelievable. Maybe you're looking at an image you made yesterday of a flower in your garden, and it's not a great image. It's not a great image. But you remember the moment when you made it, and it was profound, and it was beautiful. You're so lucky to get to be out there with that flower, for just a few minutes, enjoying it, smelling it, feeling the sun on your back. Profound. Everything else is going to disappear. Nothing else matters. It doesn't really matter, but you had that lovely moment. So impermanence makes tiny things more beautiful. I think that's a great way to look at photography, a great way to look at our good images and our bad images. Even our bad images were often nice moments, and those are valuable too, So those are some of the things I think about, just in a more general sense, with mindfulness and sort of Eastern philosophy that is helpful in the creative realm. So anyway, I hope all of this has been helpful in some small way and has resonated with some of the challenges that you are dealing with.
and has maybe been a bit clarifying. But it was fun chatting about this. And thanks for coming over to my house and joining me in my home today. All right, bye, you guys.